Hello and welcome to Faultlines. I'm your host Shahzad Raza. Recently, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif announced a major relief to the power consumer both in domestic and commercial category. And since we are in International Monetary Fund program, this relief means that the government has taken some corrective and harsh measures despite all the pressures being put on the government by the IMF. Since the budgetary proposals are well underway and very soon the government is going to announce the budget for the next fiscal year. The question is what maximum relief the government can offer to the ordinary Pakistanis. This is the main issue I'm going to raise in this program, and I'm joining in the studio by Amer Zafar Durrani. He's an economist, and thank you so much, Amer Saab, for joining us in the studio. Faad Waheed, he's a businessman and of course has a very good knowledge of economy as well. Thank you very much, Faad Waheed. Dr. Aima Mehdi is joining us on the video link from London. Thank you so much, Dr. Aima Mehdi, for your valuable time. Dr. Khaqan Najeeb is also with us, a very well-known economist as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Khaqan Najeeb. Dr. Khaqan Najeeb, I would like to start with you and this recent relief to the power consumer offered by the government and announced by the Prime Minister. You think it's going to be just an initial step of more reliefs to come, or you think that it is going to be a very, very tough choice or the decision by the government, and the government has to take some more corrective measures in the days and the months to come? Dr. Khaqan.
Shahzad, thank you for having me. So let's have a look at where the country stands. As I've always said, that Pakistan, where we were, 12 to 14 months ago, it was a must to engage with the IMF, doing the 24th engagement, and try and create some macro stability. And that's what the fund does. I think Pakistan, in terms of the macro stability, has now gotten time and space to do a lot of hard work to change the underlying structures of the economy. Energy, being an important source of cost of doing business, is one of those. I think where you're getting the relief today, if you look at it in depth, you have some fuel price adjustment. The international prices went down. Also, your rupee stabilized as you were able to not only reprofile the monies that you owed, but your balance of payments also improved. Your current account went into a surplus, part of the macro stability as the economy slowed, and that gave you a rupee stability, and you were able to translate the FPA into the relief that you've seen in terms of the electricity prices. Secondly, the international oil prices also help you get 10 rupees from the PDL. The PDL also collects you about 200 billion rupees a year, the 10 rupees, so you were able to pass that. Some part is also coming from the quarterly tariff adjustment. So all these put together, and then the tax component gives you about 7.5 rupees of relief. I still am not clear, and the authorities have not made it clear, the IPP's benefit that they've been able to negotiate. Where is that coming? Hopefully, we will get some more clarity there. So part of the overall...
Dr. Saab, the other day you must have heard the petroleum minister who was saying that the relief happened primarily because the government successfully negotiated with the independent power producers.
That's correct. So I'm hoping part of the QTA, the quarterly tariff adjustment relief, has helped in the has partly come from the IPPs, which the power policy of 1994 and 2002, which were negotiated. So in any case, you have a relief. I think this is a 3-month relief. Again, now the time and space is there to do much more structural work on the power sector, on the gas sector, on the petroleum sector, as well as on the water. So overall on the energy sector. I think this relief of 7.5 rupees and add the 22% policy rate coming down to about 12. I think IBOR is even lower than 12, so people are borrowing lower than 12%. Two important cost of doing component. The already set up textile, I think currently has a potential of exporting from Pakistan at about $25 billion.
All right. Dr. Saab, stay with us. Let me include Amer Zafar Durrani here. Amer, this 7 or 8 rupees relief for both domestic and the commercial consumers, I mean, there was a lot of hue and cry by the industrialist and the business community that power tariffs are very high, and that's why we are not very well competitive in the international market. So this reduction in the power tariff, do you think that it's going to be not only the relief but much more than that for us in terms of economy or exports?
Well, okay, thank you very much. And just following up from what Najeeb was saying, I would like to just point out that the relief, for me, could very well be a political gesture, right? Because simultaneously they decided to keep the PLD quite high. So the PDL, sorry, very high, which means on the petrol side, they said, okay, they'll give a bit of relief, whereas actually the real relief should have been on the transport and basically the part of the economy that is 30%, which basically depends on things moving. So coming back to power tariffs, who's going to benefit from 27%, right? I think, again, given that our consumer, social consumer, the household consumer has definitely a higher ratio than industry. So it's actually, the people with the air conditioners, and I'm being very facetious, but at the same time very real, that it's these people that are going to benefit the highest, right? So within the industry, let's again unpack the industries. So yes, the cotton industry was already raising hell about high power tariffs. But at the end of the day, my question is, how long, number one, is this relief going to last? You know how basically fickle these rates are and our negotiations and our, the general state of our economy, though stabilized, how do we sustain it? There are many, 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 many questions. So I think this is a very interesting political decision by the government. Let's see what the fallout of this is going to be. And I think Khaqan has pointed out to one of the other parts of this, that, is this really going to impact? Why? By doing this, while at the same time keeping the development levy on the fuel very high, in fact above 60 to 70 rupees, while the world is going through its lowest Brent crude prices since maybe, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years. So, no, actually 10 years. So the question that comes to my mind, I'm sorry, I don't want to ask a question, but in answering your question, I think the best way of putting it forward is let the consumers, the users, the household people enjoy. Because right now, I really, it would be very fickle of me to comment on.
I mean, in simple words, the other day, the Federal Minister of Petroleum, he announced and he claimed that the power bill or electricity bill for the consumer who is using less than 200 units a month would be, there would be a 50% reduction in the power bill. So, okay. I mean, in simple words, so that is a relief.
I'm saying that maybe the equity angle of this, if that's what he's trying to bring out to the fore,
and that is the largest base.
No, the largest base is household users. Now remember that we have some zamidaras in the villages that have 30 meters that keep each meter below 200 units. No, I'm not going to. We're not going to go into that debate. So let's just say all people using electricity in the households are the maximum impactees.
But
right?
do we have a system to pick and choose? For instance, you may afford like a rupees 1,000 a liter petrol in your car, in your luxury car, but of course you cannot, justify the reduction to the people who are using the 70cc motorbike.
No, that's exactly, and if you recall, I think I'm not going to even argue your point, I'm just going to respond. The response is, let's assume I can afford 1,000 rupees of petrol, let's assume he can afford it. The question is that where has the government gone on its first announcement a year and a half ago, where it said that it is now coming up with a scheme to really put the passenger kilometers generated by the two-wheelers in cities down to they will be able to reduce fuel prices. There are many ways one can do that. That scheme has never come about. So actually the government is too busy right now, and I'm not blaming anybody. It's too busy right now, fighting the basic things, and it's now coming to the point where actually on the monetary side and the fiscal side, as was very rightly pointed out again by Khaqan, we have reached some kind of a stability.
Some kind of Faad, Waheed, there's always been complaints by the business community that you are facing a lot of problems in terms of paying high electricity bill, gas bills and other stuff. So the thing is, this reduction, no matter what, would definitely benefit you and ultimately benefit the economy. Would you agree with that?
Definitely, Shahzad. I think it's one of the most welcoming decisions at this point in time. Secondly, coming after the IMF staff level agreement being held last week. So yes, from the business community of Pakistan, we do welcome this, and we actually, at this point, I congratulate the Pakistani nation because this is going to be held for another 3 months. So the inclusion of this 7 rupee reduction is from the second quarter itself. So up till the time of the budget. Meanwhile, we have seen that IMF is here. They're going to be here for another 7-8 days. There are going to be discussions on how the budget is going to come out and how we are going to work throughout this entire time. Where I also have to mention, how does it bring goodness? How does it bring celebratory to our nation? So 7 rupees, it's a big amount. The households of Pakistan are going to enjoy, and definitely when the reduction in electricity bills of businesses are going to be lower, it's going to be passed on to the consumers. So yes, we are seeing a lower inflation rate. We've seen a decrease in inflation. So that is something to look at at this point, and we can become more viable. So we can bring them go towards exports. The dream that this government is showing us is, it's about industrialization. And to put it right, the past 1 year has actually proven a little bit that, we've seen a little bit of stability.
A businessman is very calculated in terms
Yes.
of profit and loss, and you have all the figures in your head. The petroleum minister, he was very categorical when he said there would be a 50% reduction in the bills of the people who are using less than 200 units a month. So I would ask you, and I would like to ask you, and I hope that you would answer me correctly on this, that 7 rupees reduction in the power unit for the commercial consumer, how it would benefit your business and how it would benefit the economy in general.
You see, the benefit is very simple. So it's a cost push inflation when you talk about electricity bills. It's something combined into a cost of a product. So once I am getting a lesser, I'm paying lesser bills, I'm going to be charging less to my consumer. So that's the.
Would you do that?
Everybody would do that because nowadays.
I mean, it never happened in terms of the transporters. I mean, that's what Amer Durrani was
Yes,
referring
Amer is
to.
pretty much
Whenever
right
there
on
is a relief or a reduction in the petroleum prices, but there never ever the transport fare went down.
We have seen this in the past. We have seen this everywhere. There are black sheeps in every country. There's black sheep in every kind of economies. So we probably have those in Pakistan as well. And we do have that. We cannot negate these. But at the same time, there are people, there are businessmen that are going to pass this on to their consumers to enhance their business at this point. If you see in the past 6 months, we've had a very declining power purchasing people. So that's where it's going to hit. And I think it's beneficial for all the business owners, and I recommend and I also appeal to all business consumers from your show that when you're getting this facility from the government that's giving you a lower percentage of reduction in the tariff, you should pass this on to your clients.
Dr. Aima Mehdi, you sitting in London, and after President Donald Trump announced new tariffs against all over the world, and especially the countries within the European Union, I mean, there is a lot of hue and cry, and there were fear that there's going to be a trade war among the major countries, especially against the United States of America. Even the country like Pakistan was not immune from what President Trump announced and decided. The question is, against these odds and emerging global economic trends, the countries like Pakistan, is it going to be a tough choice for the government here to pass on the maximum relief to the people, since we are in an IMF program, the global economic situation is changing, and of course, we are not a very strong economy. Dr. Aima Mehdi.
Thank you for your question, and I'd rather say it's a very timely question. So there has been, indeed, there has been a lot of hue and cry about Trump's tariffs around the globe, and all economies, either they're big or small, or recovering economies like Pakistan. Everyone's been shaken, and everyone's been very attentive to how they need to, rebuttal or adjust to these structural changes. In terms of Pakistan, Pakistan probably has a 2 to 3 billion excess of exports to the US, and with the very nice formula with the trade deficit divided by the imports from the country, we've been given a 26% magic number, which is half of what it would have been, 52%. So I think in terms of Pakistan, the Pakistani government has to, or the business class has to play it very attentively and safely in terms of one, I think PKR is not thoroughly in a strong position. It's still in a volatile position given its position in the IMF, given all the loans with China, given that the State Bank of Pakistan might be issuing panda bonds in China. Um, Given all these conditions and the current uh, existence of IMF in Pakistani economy, I think it's a fragile position for Pakistan. If the business community plays it smart, then they might be able to, keep their position. But the way tariffs are working around, some countries might play it really cheap. For example, Cambodia, China, Vietnam, Laos, all even though these countries have higher tariffs than Pakistan, but they can reduce them. They can also depreciate their own currency to make their exports more viable to the US, and also they have competitive advantage in a few things because they have more economies of scale, they have better labor productivity. So the government has to play very smart in this arena. That's my thinking for Pakistan.
Uh, always the business community was demanding with the government to reduce the power, the cost of doing business in Pakistan, including the power tariff, the gas tariff, and the other expenses the business community and the local traders or the manufacturer they have to bear in Pakistan, especially the exporters. So this is the first step the government has taken, and since the budgetary proposals are well underway, uh, would you suggest, and is there any room or cushion for the government to make more such announcements?
Well, okay, if you're talking about the budgetary pressure right now on the country, like IMF has a very strong statement for Pakistan, and the statement is that the country needs structural reforms to overcome all the financial hurdles or the fiscal issues that the country has been facing for 30 to 40 years. The issue here is the current finance minister, and their kind of remedies are short-lived. Like, we are going to refinance or renegotiate the loan with the Chinese government. We are going to issue panda bonds. We are going to privatize a lot of things that are not working, PIA and steel industry, but they are not long-term measures. At the same time, if you see, the country is also facing issues like balance of payment, which has gone into a deficit again this month on month. We are also facing issues in terms of renegotiating power prices, even though they have gone down. But things like capture power plants, they have like a 23% of a levy going on them. There'll be a carbon levy on them. So the net effect, I don't see on a net level. I don't think that things are going a lot in favor. On the flip side, I would say the businesses need to be more competitive themselves. The government can't do everything. The government can't hold their hand. The textile sector in Pakistan has been treated like as a nurturing sector, and they have been given a lot of favors. Even in Europe, they have been given GST plus.
No more spoon feeding by the government to the business community. I mean, if I heard you and understand you correctly, Dr. Khaqan, are you still with us? Connection with Dr. Khaqan, are you still with us?
Yes, I can hear you.
So, you just heard Dr. Aima saying that the business community has to do a lot more than just depending on the government on the subsidies, on the relief or the concession the government is offering or has to offer as they demand time and again. But you think that this spoon feeding must over now, and our businesses should be more competitive, and the business community or manufacturers or exporters, they should take the lead?
So, Shahzad, as I explained, this is a good time. So, macro stability is a necessary but not a sufficient condition for country's growth. So, that's where Pakistan stands right now. Just to be exact, our industrial tariff has now fallen between 10 to 12 cents per unit. Our competitors in South Asia, East Asia have a tariff which is near 8, 9 cents. So, we are quite competitive there. Now, as far as businesses are concerned, as far as agriculture is concerned, as far as manufacturing is concerned, as far as service industry is concerned, Pakistan, now the time is to, really think on endogenous productivity, endogenous growth. Where we stand today, our firms, our labor, our agri productivity, all these efficiencies have to now come into play, and they come when we open our industry. I mean, we've had for the last 77 years, we've been producing cars in Pakistan. We are about to start exporting a car from Pakistan. So it was assembly lines which have not been world competitive. As I said,
One question here. All the time we saw is people passing the bucks, or passing the blames against each other. They say that it's a government job to create an environment for the business community, for the manufacturers, for the exporters, and only then they would be competitive enough to go to the international markets and compete with the countries like India, Vietnam, China, or whatever.
So government's job is to have a good fiscal situation. That's the primary job of running, from the authorities, which means that you balance your budgets well. You don't become the biggest borrower in the market. The government has been a borrower for the last 2-3 decades of 80% of the money. So private banks don't have an incentive to go and sell their money to good private sector. So as you move into reducing your fiscal, which you must do by cutting your expenditure and not only by levying the right taxation, that's macro stability in the country, right? So as we move along in the next 1 year to 2 years, the productivity-led growth has to come from the private sector. The cost of doing business has to be reduced because government is the biggest supplier, producer, transmitter, distributor of energy of all kinds in Pakistan. So the government has to ensure that they stay on this path. And as I said, this is time and space for everyone, for the private sector to improve their productive efficiency, for the government sector to improve and let go of what they are holding on to for the last 77 years. We have still 167 state-run organizations that are with the government of Pakistan, and this is with the federal government. So they have to start, to make and believe that you want to divest. And then, gearing up our regulatory agencies, creating markets of electricity. I've been hearing of CTBCM for the last decade in Pakistan, and a decade has passed, and we are still trying to make sure that we create an energy market in the country. So we need to fast pace that. At the same time, I keep saying this, Pakistan has to stay the course with the IMF. Without the IMF, the kind of $20-25 billion that need to be returned, reprofiled every year would not happen. I think that's Pakistan's way forward. And
all right. Point well taken. Amer Durrani, we keep on saying that we have to take some strict corrective measures, short term, medium term, and long term. But where do we pick the thread from? I mean, there is an issue of circular debt, state-owned enterprises, shortfall in revenue collection, fiscal deficit. I mean, there are so many big issues. So where should we start?
Well, no, thank you, Shahzad. I think that some of this was mentioned by everyone earlier than me. But I think at the end of the day, when we start thinking of where do we want to go now, I think, as I said earlier, the monetary and fiscal side are kind of balancing out, whether for good or for worse. Let's not go there. Right. But there is a structural issue in our economy, and I think some of my earlier discussants have alluded to that. Number one, the problem is the public sector efficiency. The whole issue of state-owned enterprises, the looming climate change issue, the environmental burden, the list is very long. And if you do recall, I mean, one of the things we need to be very, very, very credible with right now is how soon can we make public decision making. I put public decision making, the role of the parliament, as part of a structural flaw. So to me, whether Khaqan agrees with me or not, that's a public efficiency issue. Right? So how the parliament reacts, how policies are passed. I have a new favorite mantra, which is that in Pakistan, the biggest problem in Pakistan is, and because Khaqan just mentioned CTBCM. So, I agree with him. This was formulated probably 2 decades ago. People started writing about 15 years ago. And yes, somebody started saying, okay, let's put it in practice. So new policy in Pakistan gets dragged without being put into practice or being legislated or coming into force by the time, until it becomes old policy. So today even I will challenge Khaqan, CTBCM is a wrong policy, right? But it's not because it was not right when it was suggested. So the problem with Pakistan is there is becoming a huge gap between action where the world is taking action. So take reaction to Trump's tariffs, reaction to climate change. We write great letters, but it was never implemented. And by the time we come to the Amir Bhaja, the fact that it's
what do you think?
So I think the simple answer to your question is it's time to take structural reforms in Pakistan and really use this little breathing space of some sort that the government has been able through its monetary and
But
fiscal adjustments.
what does your experience say? Why we don't take decision in time?
Look, I mean, let me take, I mean, I'm going to answer this in a roundabout way very quickly, as fast as I can talk. The answer is, for example, you know, some years back, Germans said by 2030, we are not going to have any fossil vehicle being manufactured. It was going to go electric. BMW, Mercedes, the large manufacturers, auto manufacturers, did not come running and tell the government we need a subsidy until you do this. Everyone said this is a policy you have to deal with. Now in Pakistan, somebody says, okay, you know, the electricity, as Najeeb is saying, he says it's competitive, but I still think it's very not non-competitive. I mean, the idea that the average in South Asia, including Sri Lanka, if you start including beyond that, is 7 to 9%. Sorry, cents per kV, right? So now, today in Pakistan, you've managed to get down 14. This is not the point. The point is the old industry needs to die, right? We are relying, I mean, 28% of our consumption, let's assume half of that or more goes to electricity, sorry, the people or textile industry. Well, if you take that and you are, yes, they generate a lot of exports, but why is there no other industry? And if you heard the Aurangzeb, our finance minister today, it is pretty evident that everyone is waking up. Right?
Everyone is waking up. And are you waking up, Faad Waheed?
Well, the private sector has woken up, and this entire movement started 8 months ago from the Federation of Pakistan through the president, and all the chambers came on board, associations come on board, and we were the first ones to pinpoint how to renegotiate with IPPs, and we heard it today from the finance minister as well, that about 28 of those were renegotiated. So that was something, you know, the private sector held up. But on the other end, I would like to add here, you know, the private sector has put in everything that we had. You know, there was a time when there was no electricity in Pakistan, and it was bad governance. But we held up that time, and you know, we paid our taxes right. We made sure we were paying the government what they deserved, even though we had no electricity.
But despite all those odds, you survived.
We survived, and we're still exporting. We're still the best exporters when it comes to quality. We survived through our own means, you know. We put in our generators in. We made sure we had the energy. We made sure, you know, if we didn't have gas, we changed our machinery. We brought in lots of taxes for Pakistan.
But if you like to show us your balance sheets, you would still be in profit.
No, I think every business in Pakistan has shown their balance sheet in somewhere into the bank and has kind of, you know, gotten the money. But at the same point, that's where Khaqan also pointed, similarly like Amer did, that the government itself is the largest borrower in Pakistan. So how does a bank, you know, give loans to people to do business?
Now, I'm sorry to use this word, but most of the time we see the private sector acting like a crybaby. And Amer Durrani just gave an example of Germany. I mean, there is a policy and the private sector has to follow, not after following the government or, you know, running after the government for some subsidies or anything.
See, I as the private sector, I openly say here on your show to the entire Pakistan, to the government, we are not seeking for any subsidy. We don't need a subsidy. What we need is, we need reforms. We need proper policy makers. We need a policy made and laid down for everyone in the same way. We need fair play fields. So everything relies on this. The problem.
So you won't have any objection if the government withdraws subsidy the next day?
We don't have a problem with that.
You won't have the problem.
We will only have a problem.
You are speaking on behalf of the entire business community,
but
right?
if they're not, you know, making policies right, that's where we come in. That's the problem. If they reduce or do whatever with whatever subsidy they give it to, we only want proper policies. We want proper structural reforms. You know, we cannot be going back to the discussion board all the time.
Dr. Aima, Mehdi, Faad Bhai just, you know, emphasized on the structural reforms and saying that the private sector would not be looking for the subsidies or the concession in terms of becoming competitive in the international market. So, but what sorts of reform you think that are very necessary and required at this point in time?
I just want to add up to everything that the other discussants have said. So even though here, even in the UK, we have net zero by 2030, 2040, and then completely off grid with all the fossils by 2050, and the companies none of the car manufacturers, none of the industries making electronics, etc., or the use of fossil fuels or natural gas in the houses, none of the companies have been given subsidies. But one thing that I really like to mention is the stance of the government, which is taken as a setting stone and words that wouldn't change with the change in the premiership, and things will be held in a stationary position, and things will be followed all the way through the stationary path towards the equilibrium where all the market forces combine to enhance the economic growth and stability of the country. That is how these nations have excelled and continue to excel, and this is what makes businesses thorough and makes the people of such countries happy. Even though the companies don't are not subsidized, but the users are subsidized. For example, if a company was to make electric vehicles and not use fossil fuels, the issue here would be to ensure that there are enough buyers of cars with electricity in them. So the buyers, if I want to buy an electric vehicle or if I wanted to buy it in the last phase, I would get the subsidy to buy them. If I want to go off grid, I would be subsidized to have a heating system in my house that didn't use gas. So this is how the governments here move and evolve. The second thing about structural changing is very interesting. The two major structural changes that the country really needs is one, in terms of the energy sector, and the second is towards taxation. In terms of the energy sector, one thing that I have been in the energy sector for years here now. One thing I really fail to see in Pakistan is private companies coming in as distributors of electricity. So one, you have the transmission owners, which should be nationalized because of security reasons, because of mass infrastructure costs. But in terms of the distribution companies, that you need to have thorough competition because it is a natural monopoly, and to regulate these natural monopolies, even in the advanced states such as the US, UK, Germany, Europe, it's very difficult. So you can't operate without privatization in terms of the distribution companies. The second thing that I fail to see in Pakistan is the balancing system of supply and demand. And this is what the minister today has announced, that he will take, there'll be like a lot of forensic sort of things, investigation, etc., in terms of these companies to see how are they forecasting their demand and why.
Of course, just one point and one question, Dr. Aima, that no country in the world probably compete with China in terms of the exports and the cheap goods, the good price goods. Let me correct myself here. And of course, Pakistan. It's really difficult for the Pakistani business community and especially the exporter to compete with the countries like India and Bangladesh at the moment. So the thing is, the subsidy which the government is offering to the exporter, don't you think it's necessary and important for the country to generate the necessary revenue, or no?
I think for certain class of exports, it is very important, and even I'm sure the Chinese government has done that at a specific point in time. I don't know the name of the particular goods, but a lot of countries have. For example, when UK exports steels, it always subsidizes its companies that are exporting steel. So it's fine to have subsidies for a certain sector, but it is also very important to see to see the cost benefit analysis, how it's going to be processed, how where it's going to be in 5 years. And it's also very important to keep a check and balance of the industries, like where are they using their expenditures, and how are they upgrading their cells, and how are they attaining economies of scale. Because in Pakistan, I think textile industry has had a lot of subsidies for a long period of time, and there has been a lot of tax erosion in the sector. Sorry, but I have to say this. Even IMF has come down to the issue that there is transparency issue, there is tax evasion issue, and there is bribery issue, and there is the worst part of the country.
So since Dr. Aima, I'm sorry to cut you here, since we don't have any representative from the textile industry, so of course, I mean, there might be some issues, but really cannot, cast aspersion at the moment. But still, Dr. Khaqan, are you still with us? Lost communication contact with Dr. Khaqan. But Amer Saab, the question is, since pandemic, we've been hearing that very tough situation for us, and we really need to put our house in order. We really need to tighten our belt. But obviously, almost 4 and 5 years down the road, now when the finance minister is giving us some good news that good days are ahead, how hopeful are you that we are finally going into a mode where we can see that there would be an economic recovery and ultimately there would be a trickle down effect where we'll all be reaping the benefits of it?
Okay, there are two answers to this, right? Your question is very valid. First and foremost, the finance minister hasn't said that good days are ahead. The finance minister is saying we are doing better than before. This is a clear message. You can ask him. Secondly, he said to give and make sure there are good days ahead, you will need a sustenance and an economy that is structurally sound. Right? This is the message. So there are two ways to do that. If we do not do what we normally did, and he also alluded to that, this whole boom bust cycle that all economists or otherwise keep referring to in Pakistan, why does that happen? You know, you grow your import side, you know, then there is inflation, there is heating up the economy, you decide, okay, to cool it, again, you have to raise your exchange rates. Lots of funny things happen in Pakistan, right? Because then your consumption suddenly goes up because you just
no, but we must have done something good.
Allow me to finish. Do you have the second part of the answer? So under this scenario, how does this scenario happen? This scenario happens, as Aima was saying and as Adab was saying, that if you keep the structure of the economy the same, so the rents stay the same, corruption stays the same industries do business, the same bureaucrats happen, the same over-governance happens, etc., right? So in that case, it doesn't mean that Pakistan will not grow. If it grows by some miracle, because that is not guaranteed in the 21st century. But in case of Pakistan, we've always known, this is what Stephen Durrani, by the way, in the person who's also advising the government, in his book, The Elite Bargain, he says, let the pie grow in countries like Pakistan, right? So when the GDP's total size of the economy grows, obviously the size of each segment of the economy, their take home and trickle, if you can call that trickle. But remember, that's not a trickle, that's called growing the pie. It was never part of fundamental economic theory, okay? What is fundamental economic theory is this trickle down effect. For trickle down effect to happen, you have to have equity, you have to have distributionally issues sorted out. You know, things should work structurally. So I think the thing, and let me close on this one very simple example of improving, how we can improve the trickle down. Now, for example, the argument, Aima sitting in UK even, she said that we still need to keep the transmission nationalized for security issues. For 1 second, let me posit this in front of the national audience. I think the government will love me for saying this. Let's assume that we actually tell the Baloch government, right? The Balochistan government, it's a province of Pakistan, it's a federating unit. We tell it that, okay, you take over all transmission with the Balochistan, right? Do you think they're going to harm the interests of the Baloch nationals? Are they not Pakistani nationals? So the fundamental issue is by having this false national security mantra, we are actually increasing the cost of delivering services to Pakistan. We are increasing the cost of security. So, you know, it's these structural issues that we need to really resolve, start resolving.
How do you see this recent statement of the finance minister? Are you hopeful that, of course, he didn't say that the good days are ahead, but that was my conclusion and interpretation.
But I would always perceive that for Pakistan, you know, as a businessman of Pakistan, I was always perceive and I will be optimistic about that good days are ahead. We as Pakistanis are, you know, we are a very resilient nation. We have developed into an import-based country, but I do understand this will die down. We have a new generation of entrepreneurs coming up. We have people that are looking into, you know, indigenous exports of Pakistan. So there is hope at the end of the day. But we have to understand that this is going to be possible with collective effort only. You know, there are structural problems, there are government reform problems, but you know, we've survived these 77 years in the same globe, in the same countries, and we've kept our status. You know, I can tell you by the horse's mouth itself, you know, there are people, there are businessmen in Pakistan that want to pay taxes.
But obviously nobody would like to live another 77 years like this.
No would ever be like to have this. But the next problem that we're trying to discuss with the government is giving out policy for a stable 10 to 20 years. Once we have those policies in place, whatever government comes in, goes, you know, whatever kind of government comes in and goes, the stable policy stays there. So the businessman is not disturbed. So that's where we know we always accommodate and we always tell the government and we talk about this to have a charter of economy between the parties. So whatever they do with the politics they want to do, just leave the economy out of it.
Is the government taking you, like the business community, on board?
We've seen this in the past 1.5 years. They have been very keen. They've been discussing, especially this government, they've been discussing these issues with us. And I am very happy that the chambers are on board, the federation is on board, and we're all taking place in the same places. We're at least discussing.
All right,
things.
all right. Amer Saab, last 1 minute. When a businessman is happy with the government, how do you see it?
Well, I can't say happy.
You just said happy.
No, so actually going back, I think you
One
asked,
last minute.
yeah, a very quick minute on that. I think when a businessman is happy and a real business person is happy,
He is
I
a
think
real
there is
business
something wrong with what the government is doing.
Thank you so much.
I said
Amer,
positive.
Amer Zafar Durrani for your time and coming all the way to the studio. Thank you very much, Faad, Waheed, Dr. Aima, Mehdi, Dr. Khaqan, Hassan, Najeeb, for your time as well. And thank you very much for the viewers for watching the program. Good night and Khuda Hafiz.